Well, now I want to go to O high rail, which is a little different than O scale modeling. It's normally got 3-rail track. And the person who's going to host this segment is Dennis Brennan. But before I introduce Dennis, I want to show you the sponsor video of Millhouse Studio Models.
Millhouse River Studio builds model train working accessories that are made to last generations. Millhouse River products are built out of aluminum and have scale brass details that even the most demanding scale modeler will appreciate. Since our industry entry in 2009 with the introduction of our flagship turntable, Millhouse River has continued to add new, innovative products, like our scale transfer table, rotary coal dumper, flood coaling tower and, most recently, a working conveyor that transports coal from the dumper to the loader. All of Millhouse River Studio's stunningly realistic products are currently available in O scale. We are adding new scales on some products, including the upcoming release of an HO scale turntable featuring our aluminum construction and stunning brass details that is big enough to handle a big boy locomotive. When it comes to your layout, don't settle for less, get Millhouse River Studio.
And I want to introduce Mr. Dennis Brennan.
Hi guys. Today we're going to talk about creating bushes in a very simple way. So with that said, we're going to do this. Are you seeing that?
Yep.
All right. What you're looking at right now is some bushes that I created in a very simple, easy way that anybody can do. And here's how it started. I was walking down the sidewalk. Every morning I take my dog for a walk, and I happened to be looking down and I saw these little weeds. Now, it's something that most people would overlook, but they just look great. And so I gave them a little more look, and I thought, well, okay, let's see how that works. So I isolated a little weed just like that. And you can see from my hand in the picture that it's fairly tiny, and it looks about the right size for O scale. Well, actually, you could probably use it in even in HO, depending on where you put it. And here is a little diorama that you guys may have seen earlier in one of my shows. I built this diorama. It showed how I was doing ballasting and whatnot. Well, I just came back home and I added the weed. Now, what did I do to the weeds? Did I do anything? Yes. This right now, I took that picture today, and it was about 2.5 weeks ago that I placed it in the diorama. Now, normally you pick something and it's going to dry out, and it's going to get all like brown, but this has still got its color. So what I did is something really simple. I just sprayed it with, I happen to have some Krylon low odor clear acrylic matte spray. Now, Krylon, to be fair with you right now, Krylon is not producing this at this point. For some reason, they stopped producing it, but I've been in contact with them, and they're going to start production again. They were just stopped temporarily. They didn't give any reason. And the clear acrylic matte spray, low odor, that's the difference. The low odor clear acrylic matte spray has not been available. Now, I'm sure you could probably spray it with something else, but I haven't tried that. Probably any other matte spray, because the idea is to seal it. And if you seal it, then it's going to retain the color, at least so far it has. So time will tell. Anyway, this is another view. These were a little slightly different weed that I picked. And you can see it looks real. I mean, that looks as good as anything that you could buy. In fact, it's probably, I've seen some people at trade shows, you might find somebody who's selling something like this, and I'm not sure what they're using to preserve it. But at any rate, it's something that you should think about yourself. Now, something I want to point out here is that I'm not just using those weeds. I've got this combined with Woodland Scenics, ground cover, and there's various colors in here, and there's various levels. And it's the levels and the colors, varying the color, varying the levels, that all makes a difference. Varying the textures, color, levels, that all adds realism to the layout. And I don't care what scale you're modeling in, that is true for any scale. So let's see. All right, now this is a particular weed that I picked. It's a little different than the other ones. That's what it looks like when I isolated it. And then I then added some Woodland Scenics ground cover. I think that was turf, green turf to it. So right here, this is the one. And so even if you got something and it turned brown on you, you could probably just add some turf. And it doesn't have to be anything particular. You could add green grass. You could add anything that you could sprinkle on it. You can add to it, but you have to first spray it. What do you spray it with? I sprayed it with the clear acrylic matte spray. You could probably use hairspray. Anything that will stick it to it will work. Now let's continue on here. All right, so now here, this is the end of the show. I just wanted to point all of this out, but we can talk a little bit more about it. And so we can end this right here, and I will stop the share. I'm not sure how I even do that. How do I get out of this, guys? You want to get me back? All right, cool. So making weeds is very simple. Now, you don't have to get that plant. The point I'm trying to get at here is you should look around you. When you're out for a walk, you want to model something, look. There's a whole world out there that gives you ideas for modeling. You don't have to dream this stuff up out of your head. Just look around. You want to create something? Look for something that will work for you. It's something that I have done forever. I'll use whatever is at hand, and it's as easy as that. You want to create anything, go to the real world and take a picture of it. You want to look at how a building is weathered, take your camera and go look at buildings. If they're brick, if they're clapboard siding, if, whatever it is. If you want to model a railroad crossing, a wooden railroad crossing, you think you know how it looks, but you don't probably. Go and look at the real thing. Find one, take a picture. If you can't find the real thing, then there are plenty of coffee table railroad books around for New York Central, any railroad you can think of. They're not cheap, but you certainly can look through those books for ideas, study photographs. That's what I do. You don't have to have all of this up in your brain. You don't have to see it. I happen to be a photographer. I happen to have a degree in art, but that didn't make me a modeler. It certainly didn't hurt, but you don't have to be an artist to do this kind of stuff. When I went to art school, one of our teachers said, hey, don't be afraid to go out and look at the real thing. Go out and take a picture and use that to inform what you're doing. Just because you don't see it in your mind doesn't mean that you can't see it in a photograph. And once you start doing that and you start learning to look around, and that's actually what an artist does. What is an artist doing? If you're drawing something or you're painting something or you're sculpting something, you are actually learning how to see. What does that mean? Well, it means you're really looking at something. And when you're really looking at something, I mean, you're looking at how the light falls on it. And what does that do? That gives you dimension. So you need to think about that in your modeling. So that's about all I can say about that. And one other thing I wanted to piggyback on, if I can, for a bit, on what Bill said about magazines. Now, about magazines, I'm switching gears here, but bear with me. I have been writing for magazines for years, for model railroad, not model railroad, for classic toy trains and O-gauge railroading. I've even published a book. I didn't consider myself a writer, and yet I guess I am now, because I've written dozens of articles. They've all been accepted. And what Bill said is, you don't really have to be a writer. I never thought of myself as a writer, but even if you're not skilled in writing, I could always write a good letter. I knew that. I always had a good use of the command of the English when I was writing, but writing an article and writing a letter are kind of two different things. But editors there will help you do that. As far as photography goes, it's not just a matter of taking a picture and submitting it to a magazine. You don't have to be a professional photographer, but you do have to have a sense of composition. You do have to understand what looks good and what doesn't look good. You do have to understand how lighting works. And how do you learn that? You learn it by doing, okay? Nobody's a born photographer. Nobody's a born artist. Nobody is a born writer. These are all skills that you learn. It comes easier to some people, and some people have a natural affinity for it, but that doesn't preclude somebody who's never done it before from trying to do it. You don't know what you're capable of doing until you actually try it. And was I a born photographer? No. Were my photos always excellent? No. How did I figure it out? By doing. Okay, that's what I want to say. And then one more thing about magazines. It's been said that, piggybacking on what Bill says, the magazine has nothing of interest for me. Well, I hear that a lot in the 3-reel world. I want to see smaller layouts, is what people say. I don't like these big layouts, especially the layouts that are done by professionals. I don't have the money to hire a professional. And, you know, I could never afford to do something like that. I want to see a small toy train layout. I don't care how small it is. That's all I have room for. I don't have room for a 4x8. Maybe it's 4x4. I want to see it. Okay, well, that's good. I understand that, but here's something that you need to understand. First of all, a magazine photograph is not the same thing as going and looking at a layout at somebody's house. At
One
somebody's
minute,
house,
1 minute, Dennis.
okay, somebody's house, your brain will overlook all of the cinder block walls and all the stuff underneath the layout that's showing up. A magazine can't do that. So an article has to really, photograph really has to look nice. Doesn't have to be, you know, excellent, but you can't have junk in the background. And so those are things to think about. And if you're going to look at a small layout, it has to be a layout that has something to show another modeler, not just a couple loops of track on a plain platform. So, and that's about all I can say. As far as a large layout that's been done by a professional, he's an artist too, the guy who did it. So you don't look at the large layout, you look at the scene. A large layout is combined of many little scenes, and you could create any one of those. So think of it as trying to make some small scenes that look good. So with that done, I am finished here, and I hope that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And it's funny, but if you listen to what Bill Davis talks about from a scale standpoint, and you listen to what Dennis talks about from a high rail standpoint, what you're hearing is modeling. And that's why it's important to me to have both of these segments separate, because people in the 3-rail look at it maybe a little bit differently than the 2-railers do, but both of them are modeling. And that's what this show is all about. So Dennis, thank you so very much for your comments.
Well, thank you, Jim. I'll see you next time.
Yes, sir.